Welcome to the Stedman Solutions Podcast. This month, we are going over all the database health monitor features. As you may notice, we don't have Steve here with us today. Myself, Mitch, and George, we're going to be going over all the new features that we've added to Database Health Monitor and have recently released. So welcome, George.
Thank you.
So we kind of wanted to go over, during this podcast, a bunch of the new features, but we also wanted to kind of go over the reasons that we've added these features, because a lot of times we run into things working with clients that are like, hey, this would be really helpful to add to Database Health Monitor so that we weren't having to manually look for certain things. So with that, can we pull up the screen share and we'll just jump right into it. First off, we've added one new check to the Quickscan, so let's pull that up real quick. This is going to be Quickscan Check number 245. It's going to be all the way down here at the bottom. What this is looking for is when version store is taking up 80% or more of the TempDB space of what's allocated for. And why this is important is because as RCSI, read committed snapshot isolation, becomes more prevalent, some things that are going on the back end can cause version store to shoot up in how much space it's taking without you noticing. And this can cause your TempDB bloat to bloat out. And without noticing that, it can lock up your entire system. We've actually seen it recently. A client had an entire system lockup because their TempDB bloated out and they had to keep expanding to handle this. So this is an early warning system to catch that version store expansion, and then you can handle that before it gets to be a problem. I guess let's kind of go into, George, do you know a ton about why RCSI can cause that version store expansion?
Don't know off the top of my head.
So with RCSI, when you're doing updates to a table, if those updates will take a snapshot of that table and save it in TempDB so that the table is readily accessible for other reads while that update is happening. So inserts, updates, and deletes can make changes while reads can happen on without being interrupted. So RCSI is a great thing to have, but it can cause this sort of back end thing. So the issue comes where if you have an open transaction, it will create a bunch of these snapshots to be stored in TempDB, and they won't clear out until that open transaction closes. So the transaction opens, and then a read creates a snapshot. Sorry, I might have said that backwards earlier, but a transaction opens, a read starts a snapshot, does its read, but it won't clear that snapshot until the transaction is closed. So if you have a transaction that's opened and either it was a manual open or something opened and then failed to finish and it doesn't close, all these reads are creating snapshots in the back end, and it's going to cause that version store to bloat out. And TempDB is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So with that, we also added another report to see open transactions to help prevent stuff like that happening. This report just shows what open transactions are running in the background. It'll show you where that's coming from, whether it's a program that you're running against your SQL Server, the login name, all the interesting information about starts, and then how long. So these transactions have been open for 1 minute and 15 now, and then the last run command from that transaction. So I started these transactions about an hour ago, and you can actually see this is basically what I did. It's just begin transaction, inserting into a table random values, and then I never close that transaction, staying open on the back end. This transaction was the exact same as this, but a backend SQL Server command was ran by SQL Server itself. And so it hides what the original query was. So when you're looking at this, you just have to be aware that sometimes the original transactional query isn't always what shows up. And then it's also important to note when you're looking at open transactions, you might think that they're active query. They don't show up in what is active all the time. Only if that command is currently being run across SQL Server. will it show up in what is active? So looking at both open transactions and what is active at the same time is pretty important for figuring out what's going on there. Alrighty, so that goes over Quickscan, the new Quickscan Check 245, and that new opens transaction report. Let's go into the new command line parameters that are added to Database Health Monitor.
Yeah, this was one of those that, well, audit season came around and a bunch of our clients were like, okay, how do we reliably track this stuff? How do we get a saved report of all our health of our databases on a schedule? So we went in and we wrote a silent version of Database Health Monitor. I mean, there's a few command flags out there already, but this is kind of running the whole thing without a GUI at all. So you can run multiple instance reports. You can run the pre-built health report, and we're still working on it, but we're going to have it so you can run the Quickscan report as well.
So the big thing is we do have like these reports that you can run manually every time, right? So like here I'm running one, but I don't think I was a part of this conversation, but we had a client come and ask us to be able to run these reports just on the back end on a schedule, right? So that whenever they need them, they can just pull up the file and be ready with it, right?
Yep, exactly. So if you want to, are you ready to demo the command? So we have included in the patch notes as is a link to the command line parameters database health page on the website.
If you're also looking for that, you can follow this, hit the command line parameters, and it'll take you straight to our help page for that.
And so pretty much you can just run Database Health Monitor out of its program files, or you can run it from the link. It doesn't really matter as long as you run it with, run the exe essentially. And then there's three parameters. There's silent report, which specifies the report type. File location will tell you, or you put in where you want it to be saved to. And then the instance name is, it has to be a currently configured instance inside a Database Health Monitor because it pulls the connection info from those saved connections. So you can do multiple instances and it will generate one big report for all the instances, or you can add multiple reports and it will generate one big report for all of them. And then it will name them accordingly when it saves out. So you'll run it, and then you'll get a nice report that it's a little simple because, programmatically generating Word documents isn't the most elegant thing. But if you open it up, you got a whole lot of fun info in there.
So this is basically the exact same as that health report that's generated in Database Health Monitor.
It's also a nice thing to add if any of the database administrators out there have like a morning checklist or something. You can have this kick off at 7 a.m. and then just part of your morning checklist is to review this because it spits out all your deadlocks, all your blocking queries. It gives you a quick refresh of your CPU usage by hour. It'll give you deadlocks by database. Yeah, it gives you a nice simplified version of the heat maps. And then they'll give you backup status, which isn't working on that server right now, and it'll give you CPU usage so you can see just kind of a quick health check if you're looking for that. You can also see if you're looking at this as part of your daily checklist or monthly checklist or whatever. Database by size is a nice one because it can show you, like on this one, which I think due to us testing with the TempDB read committed isolation level, TempDB is huge compared to the rest of the database, which is a red flag. So you'd probably want to go deal with that.
Yeah, it's a nice, like, quick, if I just opened this up every morning and I looked at it, it'd be pretty easy to spot those anomalies every time. And it's nice because you don't have to keep flipping through reports. If you know where every report is, that's great, but you still have to click at them. And this is a nice way to just be able to run it, get it all in one place, do a quick review, and then move on to your next task.
Yeah. I just thought of a quick note I need to update on that because I need to add the date so that you can keep running it and it will just save it in that one folder so that if you need to look at historic stuff, they'll all be saved. But that will be added as well. And we're still polishing it, so it's pretty simple right now, but any user comments from DBAs, what would be great to have on there, what shouldn't be on there, maybe any help to help figure out what is important to everyone is always appreciated on those reports.
Yeah, it's interesting because a couple of these reports that we've added recently, I mean, even for our 3.0 release, our big one that we did just a while back, and then this release, we have a lot of user interaction, not just our team members who use it with clients, but actual users, you guys out there that reach out to us, and you run into something where you say, hey, it's really nice to, or it'd be really nice to have this feature. I love this report, but it'd be really nice to have this feature alongside it because this is the exact example. And we're like, oh yeah, that would be great to add. Let's work on that. So user requests are super helpful in figuring out what is the most useful features to add to Database Health Monitor.
Yeah, because I mean, we know what's important for working with our clients, but some DBAs have different priorities or different environments with different like restraints that they need to. They would need reports to help figure out like where to go, what to do, and what's wrong.
Speaking of that, one of the features we recently added was we didn't add, but a request from a user was the index report changes. So let's go in here. We'll just look at the DB Health history. And the index reports, a few of the index reports have seen some changes because the background process that we've done to collect index information has changed a little bit recently. So in version 3, we changed the method index information is saved to the DB Health history database. So how often these indexes are used is saved to the actual database so that you can see the historic usage over time. The good thing about this historic usage is it doesn't refresh this information on every server restart. So you're able to see, say you have it running for an entire year, but you've restarted every single month, you'd only see the last month of data on there. But with the historic information, you're able to see the entire time that the DB Health history database has been collecting information for you there. So it's giving you a more accurate representation of what's happening historically.
That's really important because some clients have certain queries that run at specific times of the year, specific times of the month. And if you have a regular restart cadence, your index usage may not be 100% accurate.
Right. You might have a heavy query that's ran at the end of the month, and you're restarting at the beginning of every month or whatever your schedule may be. So you may not even catch how important the indexes that query are. And whoever's looking at it may see, oh, I've never seen this index used, when in reality, it's doing a bunch of heavy lifting for a once a month or a quarterly query. The changes that we made to the most used, unused, and the inefficient reports is that you're able to switch between that historic and that real time, which will get you that data from the last restart. So if you're using this in conjunction, you're testing which indexes are going to be the best for your query, and you're doing a bit of performance monitoring there, or a bit of performance tweaking, I should say. Switching to real time is going to give you a better view of what's actually being used versus historic. If they're kind of new, maybe you're not getting, or you've changed the index a little bit, maybe you're not getting the most up-to-date information with that. So that comes from a user. It was a super cool request. One, to be able to work with a user to figure out what works best for them, but also see why it works best for them and how many use cases this can actually go into.
Before we go any farther, can we clarify the definition of real time and historic? So the historic is all time. Real time is since the last reboot, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the historic is
like the last few minutes or anything. It's since the last.
Yeah. Reboot. A couple enhancements. They're not the most flashy things, but they are also from user requests. is a bit more of that drill down functionality that we've been kind of just adding into Database Health Monitor. We add these big overview reports all the time, but sometimes we forget that they correlate to other reports. So a while back, we added the blocking by hour and the blocking queries reports, and they've kind of just been in Database Health Monitor for a long time, but clicking on them hasn't done a lot. But since then, we've added the ability to click on these, and it takes you to a historic blocking history and shows you what was blocking during that time. Brings up your query and what was going on for better troubleshooting of what has been happening in the past.
And another note on those weekly heat maps is we adjusted the color scheme a little bit as well to properly reflect good versus bad behavior that you should be looking out for. So we changed it. It used to be baseline. If it was 0, it would just be white, but now it's green, saying, okay, good to go. Whereas the red is definitely, you don't want 100% blocking. So it's going to be red, and then it scales between orange and blue and different colors, kind of give you a quicker realization of where things went wrong when.
Another drill down that was added was the CPU by database. So this report is another one. The CPU by database has been in Database Health Monitor since before I've been a developer for Database Health Monitor. But the CPU by query was one that was added in the past year. And they've kind of just been there. They both correlate, but we've never connected them until now. So we know that if we look at this database health history database is the one that's using most of the CPU on the system. This isn't a super accurate representation since this is a test server, which of different instances running on it. But this is using up 6.6%. And if we click on that, it actually takes us into the DB health history CPU query report and shows us what queries are using up most of that CPU. So another one that's easy for troubleshooting. You open that CPU by database report and you are wondering, oh, hey, what's actually going on under the hood there? You're able to drill down and figure that out quicker. All right, last thing that we've added to this release, backup status report. The backup status report for the longest time would only show the most recent copy-only backup. So if you have VM software like Veeam taking backups of the database, it adds in a copy-only backup so that it doesn't break the backup chain for SQL Server. And that's all tracked in the back end of SQL Server backup information. But the backup status report would oftentimes show that those copy-only backups, I don't think this is a great database to show it on. Let me see if I can find a better one while I'm talking here. It would show those copy-only backups and not a proper backup chain there. Nope, I don't have any. But now you're able to hide the copy only, and you're able to see when that last true full was, when the last differential was, and that last log, giving you the more accurate backup chain to look at instead of having a backup only or a copy only covering the right chain.
And that's pretty important because sometimes those copy backups that Veeam or like Amazon does or Azure, not to throw names out there, but sometimes those backups take way longer to restore small mistakes than normal SQL backups because you pretty much restore the whole instance, the whole VM, the whole thing. And then if you just made a small mistake, that's a pretty major downtime to switch back to that. Where if you have a proper backup chain with logs, diffs, and fulls, you can restore smaller mistakes much quicker and without having a downtime.
So we added this. We added the hide copy onlys because looking at the backup status is a great way to ensure that your backups are happening properly. Like if you have the old scripts in place and you want to make sure that those jobs are all running correctly at the same time, the backup status report's a great way to view that. But if you have those Veeam backups happening, I mean, how often do you see them running? Every 15, 30 minutes that the VM's doing a backup. And so it ends up just covering that true log chain, which you should be. Other than that, I think that's all the changes that we had scheduled to go over for today's podcast. Did we want to get into anything else? Oh, actually, we have one other
features
thing
we're working on.
We do have a little feature back to that version store conversation. Because of that, we've added we're working on adding a new TempDB allocation chart. So what this does is it shows you how TempDB is currently allocated and what is inside that. So you do have version store, what we were talking about, RCSI can alter. You have your internal objects and then your user objects. So this chart is a great way to see how that's changing over time. Here's one day. I mean, they're very small because it's my test environment, but here's one day that I was playing around with RCSI and moving things around to see what happens. So you can see this is an abnormality, easy to see on the chart. But you should be seeing this in the next release, which should be shortly after this podcast comes out. I think that's it.
I think that's all we had.
Yeah, I think that's all the features that we had. Again, we do appreciate everyone reaching out and providing feedback on Database Health Monitor. It's super helpful, especially as the developers, to get some information from our users and figure out where to take this project next. Of course, you can always check out databasehealth.com and stedmansolutions.com for more info. Then you can also check out our last podcast episodes, which are up on YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thanks for watching our video. I'm Steve, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Please click the thumbs up if you liked it, and if you want more information, more videos like this, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you can get notified of future videos that we create.